everyone. My name is Ann Simonton, and I am the producer of Moving Forward. And we feel very honored tonight to have Ashanti Branch with us. And he is the founder and creator of TheEver Forward Club, as well as the Million Mask Movement. So maybe we could start with just some information about those groups that you've started, Ashanti.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Ashanti Branch. I'm here in Oakland, California, raised by a single mother, and the journey starting off life was really challenging. My father died before I was born. What I did, the journey of going to school and realizing that there was a lot of rules from my mom's house and rules for outside the house. My mom's house, be nice, be kind, be caring, be loving, please and thank you, open the doors for people older than you, be respectful to adults. And so those are great qualities. But when I got outside the house on my way to school, being too nice and too kind and too caring and too loving and too smiley and too whatever was always not manly enough. So I began to learn really quickly that if I behave the way I could behave in my mom's house outside, it didn't work. So I had to begin switching. Okay, there's this code switching of what it means to be inside the house and outside. So long story short, I go off to middle school. Middle school was a rough time. A teacher changed my life, really got me on track. She said to me a sentence one day I'll never forget. I was in detention, by the way. She said, Ashanti, you're too smart to be acting like you're not. Life doesn't give you what you want. Life gives you what you get, but you got to make the most out of it. I know you're sad that your father died before you were born, but you're acting like you're not able to do any of this stuff, and you are. And I think she gave me permission that being sad was okay, because before, sadness was seen as weakness in my community. You can't be showing sadness. But to have permission to say, well, I do have a permission to be sad that my father is no longer here. I was turning it all into anger. So I was just angry. I was just a really angry kid at school, because at home I had to be nice and kind and caring and I had a lot of these switching back and forth all the time. But she changed my life, and I went off to college to become an engineer, graduated as an engineer, came home, wanted to be rich. That was my goal, just to be rich. I grew up poor. I want to be rich. So I worked hard. For 5 years, I realized teaching called me. I was tutoring at this learning center at the Upward Bound, and I realized this is what I should be doing. But teachers don't make money. Why? Who is this calling me to this thing that's not going to let me be rich like I dreamed of being? And that is how it all kind of came about. Is I fought it. I actually fought it by changing jobs and making more money. I thought it would erase that craziness in my mind that I wanted to go and be a teacher, and it actually made it worse, and I realized that I thought my life was going to be chasing after the money and the big checks, and it was really chasing after supporting these young people in their lives and helping them to find a way to break free from their circumstances. I could always go back and be an engineer again, but something was calling me to be a part of the change in the community. So anyway, long story short, that's how it happened. And then first year teacher, I'm doing a horrible job. I started the TheEver Forward Club because I see in these young men myself. I see, you're so smart. Why are you acting like you're not smart? And I would try that sentence that my teacher gave me when I was in middle school. I tried to, life doesn't give you what you want. Life gives you what you get, but you got to make the most out of it. And some would hear it, some wouldn't. Some would be like, man, what you talking about? And I've used that sentence so many times to try and see which ones it's going to work with. But what I learned is that I built this space for them. And I created the TheEver Forward Club as just a lunchtime meeting. I said, look, I'll buy you lunch once a week. In exchange for lunch, teach me how to be a better teacher. What am I doing wrong? Because I know the math, and you're smart. So why are we two smart people creating failure? So that's how TheEver Forward Club started, and the journey has been there. That's 16 years ago. We turned 17 this year in 2021. So it's been a wild journey of just really following my heart to the next step, and that's how our work got featured in the documentary, The Mask You Live In.
Stop crying.
Don't cry.
You need to pick yourself up.
Don't be weak.
Always keep your mouth shut.
Nobody likes a tattletale.
Bros, don't let your woman run your life, all right?
Be a man.
Be a man.
Do something.
So man up.
Man up. Man up.
Man up. Act like a man.
Be a man.
We've constructed an idea of masculinity that doesn't give young boys a way to feel secure, so we make them go prove it all the time.
Each of them is posturing based on how the other boys are posturing, and what they end up missing is what they each really want, which is just that closeness.
From middle school, I had 4 really close friends and we did everything together. Once I kind of went into high school, I struggle finding people I can talk to about things because I feel like I have to deal with it myself. I'm not supposed to get help.
Our kids get up every morning. They have to prepare their mask for how they're going to walk to get to school. Hopefully, they can take the mask off so they can focus on learning. A lot of our students don't know how to take it off. The mask sticks with them all the time. I want you to write, what is it you don't let people see? Almost 90% of you had pain and anger on the back of that paper. That's not a coincidence.
They really buy into a culture that doesn't value what we've feminized. They begin to devalue their relational parts to themselves, their relational desires.
My father has never in 30 some odd years of life told me he loved me. We didn't do that. That was an emotion, and emotions weren't allowed to be shown. I tell my son I love him every day at this point.
Older men have to make it okay for guys to be genuine and be authentic and to reach their potential in terms of achieving a healthy manhood.
We need to redefine strength in men, not as the power over other people, but as forces for justice. We're giving them a great gift when we're teaching men how to be men in ways that integrate caring and compassion into strength.
A new documentary that's coming out called Beyond Men and Masculinities. And we created this movement called the Million Mask Movement. And that's my long and short introduction of like all the things that's been happening over the last the last many years of my life, but definitely in the last 17 years or ever forward.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Why is it so important that we focus on young men at this particular time?
Well, you know, in our work, the reason we believe is really important is, and the reason the Million Mask Movement came about was because I was working with a group of young men who were really smart. They were at my old high school. We were in a circle every week, maybe twice a week, and they never opened up. I could see there was stuff going on with them. Ever Forward had already been around maybe 10 years at the point. And I realized those young men were so brilliant, but they were going through so many things outside of school that school was not even a priority. So imagine if you're at school, but school is not your priority. Your priority is food, and your priority is safety, and your priority is finding the right people to hang around so you don't get in trouble or don't get hurt or whatever the things they were not focused on. I am here to be the best student I can be. They had so many other things in their way. They were walking around as if everything was going fine and things weren't going fine. They were pretending that everything was good, even though things weren't good. And I realized that if I didn't help them to break free from that they were going to self-destruct in so many ways. You know, our jails are full of men. 94% of people in jail are men in prison. Like this is of 2.4 million people, 94% of them are men. That either says that men are bad comparative to women, or that somehow men find themselves always getting locked up in prison in a 9-to-1 ratio. What's happening? Well, I believe that men that were taught really young is like, suck it up. Don't show no feelings. You better have all the answers. You better be tough. You better have all the money. You better be able to pay all the bills. You better have all the cars, have all the everything. And you better not show that you are dealing with struggles when it happens. And when you lose your job, you better suck it up and figure out how to get another one really quick so you can pretend like nothing ever happened. And what do? We expect men to know how to navigate that in a way that's healthy. And they haven't been taught, because emotions are human. And if you tuck away emotions, then you're basically saying, don't be full human self. Just be the part of yourself that people can handle, because men are not given so much permission to feel. I don't think they want to act like that. I don't think they want to act in a way that they are seen as monsters, that they don't feel, that they don't have hearts. I think that they were trained. It's trained. It's trained to say, hey, men don't cry. Well, when you're a baby, you cry. Oh, but you become a man, you all of a sudden your tear ducts dry up and therefore you can't dry. I mean, I've seen young men in my office when I was a vice principal, like middle school boys, wiping their eyeballs like with their fingers at the bottom of their eyes, trying to make sure their eyes won't cry. I'm like, what are you doing? Get your fingers out of your eyes. Let the tears fall. You're safe here. But this idea of fear of like, somebody's going to make fun of me, somebody's going to laugh at me. But if the emotion doesn't get dealt with in a healthy way, it's coming out some other way.
Exactly. I mean, I've lectured a bit on this, on gender issues, and I'm so interested to know, like, why is there such a stigma against young boys playing with dolls so that they can learn how to care for another human and, play with another human. But it's never, they would never want to touch a doll. It was like, they have to be called action figures. All those gendered messages we get so early on, I think, have really made it very deeply ingrained. So it becomes so difficult to uncover it and work with it.
So I think it's interesting. Like, imagine if a little boy was playing with one, right? Normally, they won't know the difference that this is not good to do. Usually, there's an adult who would conform them to that belief, right? So it's not, and everyone has their belief about it. Some people say, no, a boy should never ever play with a doll. Well, that's a lot of things. All the action figures they can play with, that's not really a doll. That's something else, right? And I think that the idea is that we conform them, we train them, the adults train them how we expect them to operate in the world. Here's what you can play with, here's what you can't play with. It's like a little girl who wants to play with a truck. You're like, hey, don't play with the trucks. You can't play with the trucks. You got to go over there. And so even boys begin to learn at a really young age to conform each other. You can't play with us in this over here in this thing. We're making sandcastles. You don't get to do this. You got to go over there. Like, it happens young. And when you have got that message ingrained that this is what is a genderized activity, you begin to help others conform to that too, because you can see it on a playground. Really, young kids know how to put each other in their right place. No, this is not for you. I think that, Dr. Judy Chu, her work talks about that around how the boys began to like put themselves together. The boys came together. We got to be against the girls because they're over there and they're different than us. And the difference became the thing that separated us, as opposed to like we celebrated. And I think that they learned it young, and we taught them young that we all have qualities that are amazing and beautiful and connected. Then we can actually build deeper community. But if we're believing that I'm better because I'm in this body than you, I'm stronger because I'm in this body than you, I'm tougher, I'm more intelligent, I'm all these things, then those become how we grow up and how we treat others, I think, all along the way.
That's great. I'm interested to know, because some men's groups that are working to empower men don't really want to talk about masculinity or redefine it in any way, and they don't like the term toxic masculinity. So I'm just curious, I mean, how does Ever Forward deal with that kind of reluctance on the part of some male empowerment groups? Because, we're living in a time with Proud Boys and the alt-right and, individuals that are so blatantly and publicly inciting racist hatred and violence. I'm just curious, how can you, I don't understand any group that could take the politics out of it.
Yeah, man, that question has lots of layers to it. I want to start with this part. So I don't use the term toxic masculinity intentionally. I think what I've seen happen with that term is that men, whether they're conscious or not, they begin to hear something different than what is being said.
Yeah.
What I've experienced is that I hear men are toxic, as opposed to understanding that what is trying to be said is that there are some behaviors that are being trained into boys that then become men, that then operate out of, that are dangerous, ugly behaviors. And I think that what happens is, if I am going to try and help navigate a conversation, if I come in already guns blazing, that's actually a bad analogy right now. If I come in with this fight to you and I make you back off of your heels right away, you're not going to hear what I have to say. And so if I can change my language, I can change my language. I got good words. I mean, these are a different word. How about, do you understand that there are behaviors that men have that perpetuate, that men do, that happen, that are dangerous to our communities, they're dangerous to each other? Do you know that? And usually, if you can keep a man in the conversation, you have a fighting chance. Some men think you're trying to make men into women. You're trying to make men feminine. And it's like, look, when you were a baby, we had lots of different qualities. We would tell people when we were crying, we were upset, sad, whatever. We cry, they help us out, they figure out what we need, we deal with it. We become older, now we can't cry anymore. So now, no, you can't cry anymore. You need something, you gotta tell me with words. Okay, so now I'll tell you with words. What if you don't have words to tell me what you're feeling? What if I don't have words to say that my friend is being mean to me? Leave him alone. Don't worry about your friend. He don't need to be your friend anyway. Like, we begin to tell them how they should begin feeling because it happens. Now, I didn't have a man in my house. So where did I learn the lessons? I learned them from other men in the community. There wasn't a man in my house telling me, stop crying like a little, they would say, cry like a little girl. Don't cry like a little girl. Wait, I don't want to be a girl. I'm a boy. So, I can't cry. Oh, so what do I do with this feeling that wants to cry? Well, I turn it into anger. And so therefore, I've learned that anything that made me sad, embarrassed, shamed, whatever, that's not funny or happy, then I'm gonna turn it into anger. I told young men in our work, I said, look, we need to give our young men more emotional language. If you don't, Mark Brackett, who wrote Permission to Feel, says, if you can't name it, you can't tame it. If you can't name the emotion that you're going through and it comes out as anger all the time, therefore, people are trying to deal with your anger situation, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And you're like, I'm angry. What are you angry about? Well, I'm angry about this. Well, what's making you angry about it? Well, it's not anger. Maybe it's embarrassment. Maybe it's sadness. Maybe it's fear. But you're not allowed to show those emotions. So you convert it to something else. I think part of our work is giving young people, I told young men in our work, look, some of you got a hammer and a tickler. If you can't make somebody laugh, you just hammer them. Like, some of you are dealing with your teachers in ways that are like, oh, you can't make a joke, so therefore you throw chairs. Like, look, some situations need a little sandpaper. And some of you are using hammers on a situation that needs a little sandpaper. Hey, teacher, I forgot my homework. Can I have an extra day to bring it back in tomorrow? Instead, we're like, I don't care, then we lose our mind, right? Now, I'm talking about from experience as a teacher, and I'm talking about from experience as being a student, because I had a big hammer, like a big voice, a big body. I had a big presence, right? And I think that there was I was learning other tools, but at school I had certain rules I had to play by, right? Like, you can't act like this and you have to act like that. So I think that part of it, when your question was about how do we, when these terms are coming up, how do we just make sure that the people who are feeling like, let's just use the right term that allows them to stay in the conversation. Because if I can keep you in the conversation, I can at least help paint a picture for you that lets you see that there is something going on. That you don't need a whole lot of statistics to figure it out. You don't need a whole lot of data. You can see that men are having challenges in lots of ways, but we don't get to talk about it because we put each other on a defense. And now I'm defending something that doesn't need to defend it, but now I'm out of the conversation. And therefore, anybody else who talks about masculinity, you must be trying to make men into women, so therefore I don't want to hear what you have to say. And now we have those battles. So my work is always around, tell me what you're hearing. Tell me what you're feeling about what you're hearing. And then let's begin to ask good questions so we can begin having healthier dialogue around it.
I mean, that kind of leads into my other question about things to recommend for parents and educators.
Being a boy comes with a certain set of rules. How do you be one of the boys?
Crying was very looked down upon.
And your father was?
My father was front and center with that, yes.
They have all these feelings and there's nowhere for these feelings to go. They know it's considered a feminine weakness.
Boys work very, very hard to achieve a masculine identity. But that identity can be taken from them.
Patriarchy is a deviously clever system.
Men learn to escape by moving from shame to grandiosity. We teach them to disconnect from their feelings. We teach them to disconnect from vulnerability.
Vulnerability is a missing link that men need to be truly powerful.
To be a man means to be in the superior position. So any move toward democracy, which is toward equality, becomes a threat to manhood. And if manhood is threatened, violence is imminent. There's a puzzle that we have to figure out.
What's happening right now is an opportunity for men to be human.
to be completely trusted and vulnerable and not be judged is what helps me to becoming this new human being.
Kindness and caring and loving. And how about those be the alpha traits?
We're trying to figure out how to be fully ourselves and fully connected at the same time. It's the only thing that will really make us happy.
We're really disrupting some core foundational elements upon which our society is built, and that feels dangerous.
So we have 3 programs. We have the Ever Forward Club, which is for young men, middle school and high school, and now working with some elementary students. We have Ever Forward Professional Development, which is for teachers, parents, social workers, sometimes some high performance teams, really about building community and connection. And the work we do with parents is really around, like, first giving parents understanding that they have their own masks. Like, the Million Mask movement is around recognizing that there's more going on with me than you could ever know by just looking at me. You may make a lot of judgments. You may make a lot of intuitional thoughts about who you think I am. But when I walk into a place, nowadays I'm walking in places with masks. I never would have had the audacity to walk into any store with a mask in the previous, part of my life. Like, you know what I'm saying? But now that I walk into every place with masks, I'm always super conscious about how people are seeing me, how people are perceiving me. I'm 6'1". I'm big dude, right? I'm carrying a lot of pounds, right? Like I take up a lot of room, I take up space. And I think that what happens sometimes with parents is we're like, well, they think that because they have a knowledge about things that they don't have to ask questions. Well, your kid knows you just as well as you know them. But if you're both pretending with each other, like everything's fine. How was school today? Everything's fine. Okay, good. Everything's fine. Okay, good. And we move on, right?
Yeah.
What if you accepted what was said as fine being okay? There's this image, one of our students drew it. I'm hoping you can see it. If you look on the outside of this face, it says, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Right? Which is on the outside, right? But if you look a little closer, in between I'm okay, there's a word in there. You see it?
Oh, not.
Yeah.
I'm not okay.
I'm not okay.
And you can see it on his face.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's
It's kind of
great.
like this idea that what happens if every time somebody asks you how you're doing, you say, okay, I'm fine. Then they would either believe that, okay, I'm fine. What if they didn't ask you a little deeper? What if they, like, we put it there and hard to see. The one who drew it, his name is, he was one of our former students in Ever Forward. He's an art teacher now in Oakland. His name is Hello Futures is his artist name. And he said, well, look, I put it over the mouth because, like, it's hard to see when people are not doing okay.
Yeah.
Like, if they're saying I'm doing okay, I'm doing good, I'm cool, everything's fine, even with parents. How you ask your kid how they're doing? I'm fine. Maybe they even get irritated because you're asking them, I told you I'm fine. Well, maybe they are fine. But do they know that it's okay to tell you that they're not fine? Are you ever not fine so that they know how to navigate what not fine looks like? So therefore, or that everything is always supposed to be fine. So therefore, every time they tell you they're not fine, everything gets kicked up to level 10 and you make it worse because now they can't even tell you that they're not doing fine. And I think that so many times we're about helping ask better questions. I think you talk about questions. How about we get to a place where we can ask better questions and then hopefully be able to learn and understand more from our young people about what they're dealing with and what they're going through.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's so important. We're getting kind of close to our end of our time together, but I'm hoping that you might be willing to share maybe an overview of the kind of transformations you've seen in some of the young men.
Thank you for asking. A lot of the times in the work, we get young people who are going through whatever they're going through. And we don't assume they're going through anything when they first come to our session, but we get a chance to do these workshops with young people around taking off the mask. And we're not talking about personal protection masks. We're talking about emotional disconnection masks. The masks that have no fabric on them, but that we wear smiling around like everything is fine. And what we have seen with young people, and there's so many young people I can tell you stories about. One in particular, when I first met him, he was, the PE teacher brought him to me. I was a teacher at San Lorenzo High School. He was not dressing for PE. He was failing PE. He's a good kid, just not dressing. He didn't know why he wasn't dressing. He had offered him a set of PE clothes. He didn't know what to do because the kid never talked. Brought him to me. We started talking. I mean, I was talking to him for like 7 minutes. And I asked him a question about his mom, about who you live with, my aunt, blah, 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 where you coming from, blah, blah. I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm just curious. I'm being really curious.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm making copies and he's behind me. And all of a sudden he just stops talking. So I look back and he's like starting to cry. And I'm like, I don't even know which question hit the button. I've been asking like 2 questions for like 10 minutes already. So I'm like, okay, what did I ask? Okay. I said, is this about where you live? And it's about your mom. And he's like, yeah. His mom had passed away a couple of years before. When he was told the night that his mom died, while the cousins were in the other room playing video games, and while the aunts and uncles she died at home, he was told, stop crying, suck it up. To witness happen, he wasn't even allowed in the room where she was at because everybody wanted him to stay away, but you are not allowed to feel. He just went into a really dark, deep place. And, I'm so proud of him now. He's a U.S. Marine. He's married with 2 dogs. He has a big truck, right? He's like, I'm so proud of him about his journey. But you know where it started? It started with me just asking him what was going on. And I think that what we've been able to see is that when young people get a place that somebody is concerned and asks, I think our young people want to connect. It's human to want to connect. I think it takes training to pretend you don't want to build deep relationships. I think it takes a lot of work. And he's one, and another young man I'll tell you about. He's a freshman right now in college. He lost his mom right before his freshman year of high school. And then this summer, right before his freshman year of college, he lost his grandmother. And, just to they stay connected. Like he's struggling with like emotional stuff. Trying to be a freshman in college, you just lost your grandmother. You just inherited a house. Now you're trying to figure out, how do I navigate a house at 18 years old? What do I do with a house? Like, what do you do with a house at 30? You're trying to figure out how to, like, all the things, you have responsibilities that are now new on your plate while you're trying to be a freshman in college. I mean, I think that sometimes we just expect that people know how to do these things because they should know. I mean, there's a lot of answers on it. You can pick up this thing and find a lot of answers to a lot of things, but does that mean you know how to do it? I mean, there can be a lot of how. So I think that our work has been just giving young people a space to breathe, to be free, and to make those masks by first recognizing that there's a whole lot more going on with me than anybody could ever know just by looking at me. And from there, we can go deeper to recognizing, who can I be in my circle? Who can I be getting to connect with that can allow me to be seen as more of my real, true, authentic self? And we're doing a lot of workshops. We're actually looking for students who are interested in this work, who want to give back to their community. They can become peer mentors through this movement. And people can go to the 100kmasks.com website, 100kmasks.com, and they can make their own mask. They can, it's one picture plus 6 words. And in that experience, I think people will begin to recognize that there's more to them, and there's more to people that we meet,
Right, exactly. Thank you so much, Ashanti. It's a real honor to have you. I've admired your work for many years, and so appreciate it.
Thank you, Anne. So good to be with you today. I appreciate you inviting me to be here. Thank you so much.